It is a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We're talking inside track today. Inside track for the fifth starter, inside track for the 10th man. You guys know where I stand, but we haven't heard from Damichael Cole on the matter, at least not together just yet. And we're going to close out today's show taking a look at duos to pursue as well as duos to avoid. One duo you're not going to avoid is Damichael Cole and Joe Mullinax. This is Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, once more with you and once more riding with Damichael Cole, my wonderful co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, the award-winning beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies at the Commercial Appeal, the incomparable Damichael Cole. So good to see you again, partner. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday?
I'm doing great. You know, it's a Wednesday. We had a National Chicken Wing Day yesterday, so you know I got busy. I get busy. I don't play about my wings.
People talk about barbecue with Memphis all the time, understandably so.
Yep.
The best chicken wing I've ever had in my life was in Memphis, Tennessee. Very underrated chicken wing, and I've had a good amount of chicken wings in my day. Hello, right? You can tell by my general presence and demeanor. But shout out to Central Barbecue. We need to get a sponsorship. Send me some smoked chicken wings. So that's where, and again, I know there's other places. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know the next time I'm in Memphis where I need to go. But that is my number one with a bullet right now is Central Barbecue, the smoked chicken wings there at Central. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you get Damichael and I each and every time an episode drops here on Locked On Grizzlies. Hopefully you're an everydayer at this point. Every time we have an episode, you're joining us. If not, by all means, hopefully you enjoy the show and you decide to subscribe and you hang out with us each and every time we've got a show. And if this is your first time here at Locked On Grizzlies, hello, welcome. I promise I don't open the show talking about food every day, although in fairness, this time, Damichael started it. But if you look at the two of us, you can easily tell who eats more food, and we can leave it at that. Damichael, so good to be back with you, as always. And we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show, really kind of taking a look at the roster as it currently stands. Again, trades could still happen, signings, all that sort of stuff. But where we currently are at, we're going to start with the starting lineup. And I think you and I are on the same page with the four guys that are going to be starters. And let's start there, just so we're on the same wavelength here. John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., because obviously. Zach Edey, because obviously, if Zach Edey wasn't a part of the long-term plan, Taylor Jenkins would probably still be the head coach, and Zach Edey would probably be playing somewhere else in the NBA. It is, I think, at this point, fair to say. And then the fourth guy is Jalen Wells, even though some people, for some reason, have fallen out of favor with Jalen Wells. I don't fully understand that. Jalen Wells is my fourth confirmed, at least in my mind, starter. Are we on the same page with that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Those are the four guys that have separated themselves in that way. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now, when I talked about this the other day, it was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That was my fifth starter. That is who I went with. But in conversations you and I have had since that solo episode where I talked about this, you made it seem like there might be other guys that are in that mix. So I want to give you the opportunity. The floor is yours. Are you with me that it's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, or do you think this is a fluid situation and it's not just competition for the 10th spot on the roster, like we'll talk, or on the rotation, excuse me, like we'll talk about later? There's competition for the fifth starter.
Yeah. This is where I toe the line between, reporter and giving my opinion and things like that, because when you talk about the reporting side of me here, and I've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, like the fifth starter is not some closed off, it's automatically Kentavious Caldwell-Pope thing. And I mentioned it even before Summer League, before Gigi Jackson played well in Summer League. You can go back and listen. It's not a closed idea that Gigi Jackson could be the potential fifth starter. Now, with all that being said, I do think it'll be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But as we get closer to camp, when camp gets here, it's not going to be some foregone conclusion that Contavious Caldwell Pope automatically will be the starter. Sure, you can chalk it up as he has the inside track, he has the veteran, presence. He is kind of the most stable option, so to speak. Like, I like to think of it as, if you're talking about in terms of who presents the highest floor, who do you know exactly what you're going to get from. Contavious Caldwell Pope is probably the best option in that case scenario. Whereas if you're trying to think about the ceiling, that's why we keep talking about Cedric Coward. Preseason will be very big for him. Gigi Jackson, same thing. Those are two guys who can really, who could really potentially be the long-term fifth starter for the Grizzlies, but they got to show it, and they got to consistently show it. And there are question marks that come with both of them, whether it's Gigi Jackson. We know the Grizzlies want to see more on the defensive end. He has to, the same way that he played in Summer League, it has to translate to when he's on the floor with John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and in those lineups. And then, of course, with Cedric Coward, he's like the mystery man right now. He's like, we think and we have that idea, but it's almost like Bigfoot. We got to see it to believe it, right? So Cedric Coward, you've seen what people have said about him, whether it's the workout videos, whether the fact that you mentioned, though, like he was committed to Duke. Like, that should tell you enough in itself. But those two guys really jump off the table with Gigi Jackson and Cedric Coward as the biggest contenders. But right now, I think if you're just chalking it up as who will it be, it feels like it's going to be Contavious Caldwell Pope.
And I do think there's an important demarcation line to have there, right? Like Cedric Coward, in terms of me not being worried about him, it's the injury angle. Like, there wouldn't have been a bidding war among the blue bloods of college basketball if there was some grand fear that this guy's shoulder wasn't going to be ready to go by the season. That just wouldn't happen, right? So I am of the mind that Cedric Coward's going to be ready to go. Will Cedric Coward be, like Coach Thorpe said, the second best player in this draft, going back to the article we talked about a few weeks ago around the draft? I hope so. But like you said, that is the definition of the Bigfoot angle that you just took there. Like, it's a flash. We have to see it. This guy has only played 6 basketball games in the last year and a half or so, right? So I think that the biggest piece for him is going to be getting into preseason, showing that he's physically capable. Is it possible that he has a Jalen Wells-esque ascent to the starting lineup? Yeah, that's possible. But if we were placing betting odds, I think Contavious Caldwell Pope is the favorite as of now to be that fifth starter. I love the Gigi Jackson idea. And that is, again, we talk about people being mad at me online a lot. Folks think I don't like Gigi. That makes no sense. I've always liked Gigi, and I like Gigi in a starting role because of Jalen Wells' defensive ability. If Gigi is able to continue to grow as a defender, which we did see flashes during Summer League, you talked about that on a recent episode, and I like it because Jalen Wells, you don't want Jalen Wells to score 18 points a game. That's not really his game, right? That's not what you're looking for from him. At least that's not what I'm looking for. Gigi Jackson as your second perimeter scorer, you combine the defensive acumen of Wells with Gigi as a scorer. I think there's real possibility there. I like that potential. I would want to see Gigi get that opportunity before anybody else if it's not going to be KCP.
Yeah, and when you factor in, you got to factor in kind of lineup balance and things like that as well. And when we talk about the floor with Contavious Caldwell Pope, because of the fact that if you start Contavious Caldwell Pope, you start Jalen Wells, and then, of course, Zach Edey, you're going into the season, well, not the beginning of the season probably because of injuries, but you're going into games where Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant are your only guys in the starting lineup who are, positive self-creators, at this point of their careers, and guys who pretty much can score 20-plus points. So it's going to be a heavier load on Ja and Jaren if that's the starting lineup on the offensive end. Now, defensively, you're going to get after it because you got Contavious Caldwell Pope, you got Jalen Wells. They can switch up some matchups. If Jalen Wells is having a tough matchup against this type of guy, okay, Contavious Caldwell Pope, you go get him, and Jalen Wells, you go get the other guy. So it'll work out in that way. In terms of just giving this team more defensive versatility on the perimeter, something that they really, really wanted to target in the offseason. And clearly, it's been an emphasis. Whereas with the guy like Gigi Jackson, and potentially we think it could be with Cedric Coward as well, they are the type of guys that give you that scoring balance where, that what you lose some of with Desmond Bane being gone, where if Ja Morant, is having an off night or just having another guy on the perimeter who can be a threat. So teams won't just throw, their top perimeter defenders at Ja for 48 minutes or whatever the case may be. So it gives you that other option. And, I think that is kind of being factored in as well. That's why the progress of GG Jackson on the defensive end is really, really being closely monitored within the organization, because if he takes the steps summer league, I thought he looked fine defensively. If he looks like that player over the course of NBA season, the engagement, the activity and things like that, GG Jackson will have something to say. And then Cedric Coward, of course, if he looks like a lottery pick and, plays with some of that efficiency that he played with in college basketball at all three levels with the defensive potential that he has, he'll definitely have something to say too.
Context is significant. Putting you on the spot a little bit here. How many NBA players would you say actually played for the Memphis Grizzlies in Summer League? 5 or 6?
Yeah, probably about 4 or 5. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's do a rough estimate that 33% of the Summer League guys were actual NBA quality players, right? Is that a fair guess?
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is we talk about Cedric Coward being a real important focus of preseason. That's 100% true, especially for what we're about to talk about with the 10th man conversation. If Gigi's going to be the starter, preseason's most important for him next, right? Because we have to see him do it against actual NBA level talent on a consistent basis on the defensive end. Let Damichael and I know in the comments. Hit us up on X at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Who is your 5th starter as of this moment? Inside track goes to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for the moment, but GG Jackson may be on his heels. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to extend the conversation to the reserves, right? Again, I think there's 4 pretty set, solid reserves. Who's going to be the 10th man on this Grizzlies team? Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever wished managing your money felt easier? I know I have. With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is much more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I share my life with my beautiful wife, Meredith. We plan around our 3 kids. We have so much going on each and every day. It's a fantastic way for us to stay on the same page and manage what our money is. We want to retire someday, right? If you're thinking about retirement, you're old and washed and you got a little gray in your beard like me, you need to start thinking of those things, and Monarch Money helps that happen. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, Damichael, so we're continuing our conversation here. And again, this is similar to something I did on a solo show while you were out a week or so ago, but you didn't have a chance to really kind of chime in. So I wanted to make this a more complete conversation with, somebody that's much smarter about the Grizzlies than me, also, better looking, younger, just all around a superior person. I think that for the contenders for the 10th man, you've got Ty Jerome, obviously. Shout out to the University of Virginia Wahoos, okay? You've got our boy. Can I say that now? Our boy, Scottie Pippen Jr.? Or is it still your friend of the show? He's clearly your boy. Everybody understands that, but he's our boy now, right?
Friend of the show, yeah.
Friend of the show, Scottie Pippen Jr. He clearly is going to be in the rotational conversation. I think he's earned that. He deserves that. Yeah. And then the 2 bigs that may be starters as the season starts, you mentioned a moment ago, health-wise, you've got Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, right? To me, those are the 4 locked-in reserves, which leaves open the contenders for the 10th man. Is it as simple for you as the names that we talked about in the starter conversation that don't win that competition? Is there somebody like a Cam Spencer who could sneak in there? Or is it something where it could be a night to night? Maybe Isolo is a little different than Jenkins in that way. Maybe on one night, due to the matchup, it could be a guard like a Spencer because they're smaller in their reserve unit. Maybe another night, it's a Landale. Maybe it's multiple bigs and going big in a lineup. Do you think there's more malleability of rotation under the Isolo regime?
Yeah, I'm going to work backwards with this one because that is an important factor too that we can't really talk too much about yet because we don't know with Isolo and how he'll use his rotations and things like that. We know Taylor Jenkins was a very unique guy in terms of the way that he used his rotations.
It's a good way to put it. I like that. Unique.
It was not kind of the mold of the way the league was going, but you got a new coach. We'll see kind of his tendencies along those lines as well. But you talk about 10-man rotation, and the theme of the show so far is just it's all about the wings. Like you have a lot of certainty with the guards and how that'll shake out and the bigs, right? And the guys who are going to play there. But along the wing, that is pretty much where most of the competition will be. That is where most of the opportunity will come. For players who don't know whether they're going to be playing a lot of minutes, a little bit of minutes, or not playing at all. So yeah, I think it's going to be the same name. So we're talking about the 10th man. You mentioned it already. It's probably going to be Scotty, Ty, Santi, BC, and then there's going to be that fifth guy where it could be Vince, it could be Gigi, it could be Cedric Coward, it could be John Conchar. It's a bunch of different names. Even in Cam Spencer, as you just said, Cam Spencer. With his three-point shooting could get a chance. But I said I'm going to work backwards because these things tend to always work themselves out, right? Like every year we go into the season, it's like, oh, who's going to be this guy? Who's going to be that guy? And naturally it plays out and it becomes pretty much a no-brainer at some point. And I think that's exactly what's about to happen this season because we're going to go into the season. Zach Edey's not going to be available. And, the Jaren Jackson Jr. situation is in the air, but I think with maybe a little bit of certainty, I don't know this for sure, but we could say that Jaren will probably miss a preseason game or two. And I point that out because that will give you multiple opportunities where Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. probably won't be in the rotation. You're like, Damichael, what does that have to do with the wings? Well, if those guys are out of the rotation, let me tell you what, the Grizzlies aren't just going to throw two bigs in the lineup to replace those guys. They have too much talent on the wings. They're going to slide a couple of those guys down to the four. Whether it's as me and Joe talked about, you're going to get some Gigi Jackson backup minutes at the four. If Santi goes into the starting lineup with Jaren being out, I'd envision in that situation, Gigi Jackson would move to the backup four spot. And then that clears up a spot on the wing. Maybe Vince Williams, maybe Cedric Coward, maybe both of them mix into time. And we're going to see that over the course of the preseason, maybe even early in the season, if Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey miss some time, because at that point you got Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama, and Jock Blundell as kind of the three guys who probably will play the majority of those minutes at the power forward and center spot. So you got another spot there for a guy like Gigi. And when that happens, everything's going to take care of itself because either Gigi's going to own that moment or, Cedric Coward's going to come in and take advantage of the extra opportunity. It always works out this way. So that's kind of how I feel it'll work itself out. But if I had to say a name, I'm not closing the door on Vince Williams yet, but it just feels like a strong opportunity for Gigi Jackson.
Gigi is going to be given every opportunity. I truly believe that, and that's a good thing. I think we have to remember he's still one of the younger players in the NBA, even though he's entering his third NBA season. A very unique situation when it comes to Gigi in terms of his age and experience. I am happy to say that this team is pretty much set in terms of primary creators in the guard position, right? Like that makes me excited that you have Ja Morant, Ty Jerome, and Scottie Pippen Jr. all able to fill that void, because that's been a space that has been a problem in the past, right? For this Grizzlies team, it feels like the Jerome signing obviously helps address the shooting that's lost in the Bane deal, but it also, between him, Pippen Jr., and Ja, there should always be something on the court that can be that primary initiator of offense. That hasn't always been the case with this Grizzlies team the last few years.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, that is a big part of bringing in Ty Jerome. And then you talk about, we're going to talk about it a little more the next segment, like just having guys who have that versatility, can play on the ball, can play off the ball. And they're going to have that, with the guard. So that gives you some lineup versatility, as well. But yeah, the shooting, I think, is a big part, of this, because if you just be honest with yourself, you just look at the makeup of the roster. Even listen to the names that Scotty said when he was on the show. But the best shooters are the guys who are going to be coming off the bench. So, I think Jalen Wells could take a leap forward. I mean, Jalen Wells shot the ball terrific for most of the season. And I think February, March, he kind of just like fell off towards the end of the year. But he's talked about, kind of maintaining going into this season and maintaining that level. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope didn't have a great shooting year. We know he had some great shooting months, but he did not have a great shooting year overall last season. But, I mean, I feel confident in saying Ty Jerome will be a very efficient three-point shooter. Cam Spencer will be a very efficient three-point shooter. Santi Aldama showed last season he's going to get him up. He's going to be a nice volume three-point shooter, and I think he could stick around 36, 37, maybe even 38%. So I trust his three-point shooting, to that level. So you got pretty much three guys off the bench who could really light it up on any given day from beyond the arc. And you got a couple guys, Jalen Wells, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Those aren't guys you just leaving open daring to shoot. Like, don't get me wrong. But when you lose a Desmond Bane, when you lose a Luke Kennard, that immediately becomes a question in terms of how do you replace that shooting. And a lot of it is going to be in the bench. So I'm curious to see, how many of those lineups where we see where it's less about the 10th man playing. It's less about the 10th man playing with the reserves and more about that 10th man probably potentially, being in those lineup combinations. We used to talk about how Ja Morant and Luke Kennard, played together, or how Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. played together. It's about those combinations as well.
And that plays perfectly into what we're going to close out this edition of Locked On Grizzlies with when we come back here on the show. Duos to pursue and duos to avoid, because rarely do starters and reserves never interact, right? There's going to be mixing and mingling. Who do we want to see play together and who do we not want to see play together? We're going to talk about that next. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by Damichael Cole, my wonderful co-host. We are here closing out this Wednesday edition of the podcast. Thank you so much wherever you're checking out the show. Damichael, duos, right? Two-man game. We talked about this a lot. Two-man lineup data is a very significant piece of the puzzle when you're breaking down guys playing together next to each other. Rotations are going to mix. There's never going to be, or hopefully, knock on wood, there's never going to be true second units out there. At least there shouldn't be, right? In terms of how you're managing the rotation, especially for this Grizzlies team. So let's start on the negative end. All right, let's start. We don't want to end on a downer here. So I'm going to give you my duo to avoid first. And you may disagree with me on this. I have a feeling our audience at Joe Mullinax, at Damichael C in the comments, you might disagree with me on this. I am not touching Ja Morant and Ty Jerome with a 10-foot pole. I am avoiding that combination entirely unless you have somebody like a Jalen Wells or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as that additional perimeter player. Then maybe I can be talked into it. But I think that Jerome is a defensive liability. It's fair to say that Ja is probably the better defender of those two guys. And that's, more so about Ty than it is about Ja. So I would not want to put those guys in that situation unless you're talking Jalen Wells, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr., right? Like something like that, where the other three dudes are really strong defensively and kind of clean up messes off the dribble penetration. My duo to avoid, unless it's in a very specific lineup combination, would be Jerome and Ja.
Joe, I actually think that lineup will be good in the regular season. Now in the playoffs, I do think we see less of it because I think
and that's important. Well, we're not necessarily trying to win a championship anymore, right? Exactly. But we are trying to, not be a play-in team. And I think if your goal is to improve your defense, having your 2 point of attack defenders at least on ball, like that's a lot of switchability. If you're an opposing team, like let's use the Lakers, you got Luka, you got LeBron. You could pretty easily get a switch, and now you're going against Ty Jerome or Ja Morant as a bigger creator of offense. The Lakers are going to feast on that, and that's just one example, but you could go down the list of the Western Conference.
No, for sure. I mean, look, trust me, you've seen everything I've said about the Ty Jerome sign. I've been saying that as much as anyone, but in terms of the regular season, Ja and Ty, the dynamic ability you'll be able to have on the offensive end, the self-creation that both of those guys give you, like I think it'll be all right. It'll be certain matchups, you play against OKC or you play against those physical teams that can limit, some of the things that the Grizzlies like to do on the offensive end with those two. Then I think that's when it'll really come into play. I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to go to the wings because I've been giving the wings a lot of love. So now we got to go in a different direction a little bit. You say Ja Morant's at point guard. I really don't like the idea of the combination of Jalen Wells and Gigi Jackson at this point in time. It's primarily centered around the idea of being playmakers. Now, this is something that both of those guys came into Summer League with the idea of wanting to improve their playmaking. Towards the end, we saw it more with Gigi Jackson. There were stretches where Jalen Wells looked like he had solid moments at playmakers, but overall, neither of them were great secondary playmakers over the course of Summer League action. And then, as you said earlier, I mean, most players playing in Summer League aren't going to be playing in NBA games. And then if you go to last season, Jalen Wells nor Gigi Jackson were really high assist guys, and neither of them were really put in high volume situations as well. But even when Gigi Jackson was put in high volume situations over the last couple seasons, and when Jalen Wells was put in a little bit higher volume situations in the course of Summer League, neither of them took that jump as playmakers as you wanted to see. So it just, my thing is, when you put those two in the lineup together, I mean, Ja Morant can handle a large load. Like he'll be fine. But when you go against certain teams, and you like a OKC or like a Dallas, when they have the size in the paint, and they have the size on the perimeter to basically say, we have the ability to make it a really tough night for Ja. If he gets 30, he's going to have to work his butt off for it. You're really going to need those secondary facilitators for Ja to hand the ball off to in certain situations to kind of alleviate some of that pressure. And they've had that in the past with Desmond Bane. And sometimes it works out really well. You go back to that Timberwolves series in the playoffs. I'm always going to point to that, because that is a perfect example of why I'm saying this duo would be incapable of doing what happened in that series. The Timberwolves basically formed a goal line defense when Ja Morant drove the basketball in that series. It was wild. But in that series, the Grizzlies had a Desmond Bane, and he was able to not only score for himself, but he was able to create for his teammates and kind of take advantage of the pressure that Ja Morant was receiving in that series. And that series is probably the most prominent example, but there are several times where we saw that be the case. And you throw a combination out there like a Gigi Jackson and a Jalen Wells right now, I don't think they're ready to take advantage of that just yet. Two very talented players, but the playmaking has to take that leap for me to confidently say they can complement Ja Morant to the best of their abilities.
This probably won't shock you, partner, but we're going to end on a positive note here. A duo that I want to see, that I want to pursue, is two dogs. Arr, 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 arr. I know some of you might be afraid. Is there an actual dog on the podcast? No, that was just me doing my excellent dog impression.
That's just Joe. That's just Joe.
Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Brandon Clark. I can't wait to see these two together, because I love defensive malleability, right? The ability to go out there and fill multiple needs. I'd love to see the Grizzlies switch a little bit more defensively. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has that dog in him. I don't need to bark again. He has that dog in him. That's one of the reasons he's here. Scottie Pippen Jr. talked about it a couple days ago. Zach Kleiman, the Grizzlies GM, has actively said we're looking for those types of players, and KCP is that. We know Brandon Clark is that, right? Shout out to modern medicine. We know that guy is going to compete, even if he loses half a step or whatever the case might be. He looks fine when he's healthy. That guy can go and get after it. You mentioned the Timberwolves series from a couple years ago. He was one of the major reasons the Grizzlies won that series, right? So I think that when you look at KCP and Clark, that defensive versatility, the ability to do a lot of different things together between the wing and the perimeter and a big, I can't wait to watch those two guys on the floor at the same time.
This is just a Gigi Jackson themed episode for me, huh? Because I'm gonna stick with Gigi Jackson in the lineup that I want to see him in. And Joe, I don't know, you might like this one. We'll see. I want to see Gigi Jackson and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor more together.
Ooh.
We talk about the Gigi at the 4 idea. Slide Jaren over to the 5. I know everybody's going, but rebounding. Put Cedric Howard at the 3. Let's see if you have a rebounding problem then.
He is an elite rebounder for his position.
I mean,
and basketball, unlike John Conchar.
And you got some size there. You got size all across the board. And Gigi Jackson, it'll be a bigger emphasis for him as well. And then you got Jaren Jackson Jr., the offensive versatility that grouping gives you. Defensively, the potential there. And I think Gigi just tends to operate better at the forward. There's more spacing. I think he'll take advantage of that more on the offensive end. We know Jaren can play at the 5 on the offensive end. He's done that. I want to see a little bit more of that combination going forward. I think that can be, we see it with Santi and Jaren. We've seen it with BC and Jaren, but Jaren kind of playing that 5 and having that other guy alongside of him that can be kind of a Swiss Army knife has really worked out well for the Grizzlies in the past.
Absolutely. And I do believe that there is going to be a lot of opportunity for Gigi at the 4 because you don't need him to be that offensive facilitator at that position, right? It's not as important. You have him out there, and Scottie Pippen Jr. and John Morant are your guards in that front court combination that you just talked about. Who cares if Gigi Jackson gets an assist? He doesn't have to worry about that. That doesn't need to necessarily be his focal point. So I like that pairing, to be sure. Let us know some pairings that you're excited about or maybe afraid of going into the season. Hit us up on X, at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Hit us up in the comments as well. Thanks for being with us on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow, I will be flying solo on the podcast. It'll be just me on our Thursday edition of the show. Not a big deal. Closing out July. Happy to do that. And thank you so much for being with us on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Hopefully you'll be back with us tomorrow. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can check out Locked On Grizzlies. Of course, make sure that you're a subscriber. Make sure that you're with us each and every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Until then, stay locked in. I'm Joe. He's Damichael. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll catch you next time right here on Locked On Grizzlies. See ya.